Johnny Winter played like a man possessed, blistering riffs, soul-deep blues, and a stage presence no one could match. Fans adored him, guitar heroes respected him, and critics hailed him as one of the greatest to ever touch a fretboard. So why did the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame treat him like he didn't exist? No nomination, no recognition, not even a whisper. Tonight, we uncover the hidden politics, personal grudges, and uncomfortable truths behind the Hall's silent war with a legend, and the real reason Johnny Winter was kept out in the cold. But to understand the man he became, the story must begin where it all started. Johnny Dawson Winter III entered the world on February 23, 1944, in Beaumont, Texas, at a time when his family had no idea how drastically his appearance would shape his life. Born with albinism, a condition his mother barely understood, Johnny spent his first years being raised by Edwina Winter while his father served overseas during World War II. When John Dawson Winter Jr. returned home 2 years later, he was stunned by his son's pale skin and icy blue eyes, but instead of pulling away, he embraced him. A musician himself, he believed music could give his son strength and purpose. When Edgar Winter was born in 1946, also an albino, the brothers became the only two in the family with the condition, an unusual bond that set them apart from childhood. Growing up, Johnny faced constant teasing and bullying. Classmates mocked him with names like Cotton and Whitey, and he often ended up in fights. But at 12, he decided he'd had enough. After a week fueled by Popeye spinach and Lone Ranger Cheerios, his idea of gaining super strength, Johnny confronted his main tormentor on the playground and won decisively. That moment changed everything. From then on, he wasn't just the kid who looked different, he was the toughest fighter in school. Music became Johnny's refuge. Encouraged by his father, he moved from clarinet to ukulele before finding his true calling with the guitar at 11. By 15, he and Edgar formed Johnny and the Jammers and released School Day Blues, gaining regional attention and landing spots on local TV. Living in Beaumont exposed Johnny to Cajun, country, gospel, and especially the blues, sounds that shaped his identity long before fame found him. As a teenager, Johnny often slipped into black clubs to hear legends like Muddy Waters and B.B. King. Despite the racial tensions of the era, he felt welcomed. "I think they knew I was sincere," he later said. One night in 1962, he got the chance to prove it. At the Raven, a packed black club, Johnny begged B.B. King repeatedly to let him play. When the blues icon finally handed him a guitar, Johnny delivered a fierce solo that brought the crowd to its feet. B.B. simply took his guitar back with a smile. Johnny had earned their respect. By the mid-1960s, Johnny Winter was fully entrenched in the Texas blues circuit. He played under names like Texas Guitar Slim, worked with local bands such as Neil and the Newcomers, and backed countless musicians while sharpening his style. His range, rockabilly, swamp boogie, straight blues, set him apart, while his brother Edgar was beginning to rise as a gifted multi-instrumentalist. By 1968, the blues revival was gaining momentum, thanks to artists like Hendrix and Mike Bloomfield, and Johnny could feel the shift coming. But he was still stuck playing commercial gigs to survive, delivering Wilson Pickett and Otis Redding covers to crowds who didn't want original blues. Taking a risk felt impossible, at least until drummer Johnny Mac Turner stepped in. Turner urged him to leave the bar band circuit behind, insisting that if Johnny moved to Dallas and played real blues, he could finally break through. Skeptical, Johnny hesitated, but Turner persisted. Soon, a new band took shape with Turner on drums and Tommy Shannon, later famous with Stevie Ray Vaughan, on bass. They lived cheaply, scraping by while Johnny's girlfriend worked to support them, but they committed to the music they loved. At first, audiences hated it. They demanded old hits and rejected the band's blues sets outright. Still, Johnny held firm. Their luck changed at Houston's Love Street Light Circus, a hippie club that embraced their sound. From there, gigs in Austin, Dallas, and Corpus Christi followed. The pay was tiny, far less than Johnny once earned, but for the first time, crowds were responding with excitement. "We really felt we were just about to make it," he later said. That same year, Johnny recorded the Progressive Blues Experiment in Austin. The album captured everything he'd been working toward: raw power, deep emotion, and blistering guitar work. Tracks like Be Careful with a Fool and Going Down Slow showcased his mastery, while his Robert Johnson cover, Kind-Hearted Woman Blues, revealed a haunting authenticity far beyond his years. By late 1968, the buzz around Johnny Winter exploded. Rolling Stone ran a feature calling him the greatest thing in Texas, still starving to death, and that single line triggered a fierce bidding war among major labels. Around the same time, Mike Bloomfield invited him to sit in at the Fillmore East. Johnny walked on stage, tore through B.B. King's It's My Own Fault, and stunned both the audience and Columbia Records executives. Days later, he signed a groundbreaking $600,000 deal with Columbia, an unheard-of sum for a blues musician. In 1969, he released his self-titled Columbia debut, a fiery blend of blues standards and originals like Good Morning Little School Girl and Dallas. With Tommy Shannon on bass and Uncle John Turner on drums, plus guest appearances from Willie Dixon and Big Walter Horton, the album showcased Johnny's blistering slide guitar and soulful vocals, immediately positioning him as one of blues rock's most electrifying new forces. On stage, he was unstoppable. Touring non-stop, he lit up festivals and major venues with explosive sets, including a now legendary appearance at Woodstock. Tracks like Mean Town Blues and Johnny B. Goode became signature moments powered by his Gibson Firebird and raw emotional delivery. But success also brought exploitation. Bill Josie of Sonobeat Records released the Progressive Blues Experiment without Johnny's consent and later sold it to United Artists, profits Johnny never saw a penny of. Even worse was Roy Ames, a Houston producer who had lured Johnny into signing an early management agreement. Once Johnny signed with Columbia, Ames sold off his old recordings and compositions to various labels, flooding the market with unauthorized albums like About Blues. Johnny watched helplessly as others cashed in on his name. Despite these setbacks, 1969 became the breakthrough year that defined Johnny Winter. His Fillmore East performance with Bloomfield and Al Kooper became legend, his Columbia debut climbed the charts, and his Woodstock set sealed his place in rock history. But not every show during Johnny's rise was a triumph. One 1969 performance at the Philadelphia Spectrum became notorious after Johnny and his band dropped what drummer Uncle John Turner called the strongest LSD we ever had before going on stage. The revolving platform and flashing lights left them completely disoriented. At one point, Johnny mistook the front row for the backstage entrance and leapt into the crowd, only to be hauled back by roadies. Looking back, he joked, "It was like a sonic merry-go-round. After that, I wouldn't play a revolving stage again." The non-stop cycle of touring and recording soon took a darker toll. Johnny leaned heavily on alcohol and pills to cope, drinking a fifth of Jack Daniels a night and using downers like Seconal and Tuinal to come down. By 1971, the excess had become unsustainable. Shaken by the deaths of peers like Hendrix and Joplin and fearing he might be next, Johnny checked himself into River Oaks Hospital in New Orleans to quit heroin. "I didn't want to die," he said. "The mental part was the worst. It messes with your head." He spent 9 grueling months in treatment, enduring painful withdrawals but forming new friendships with members of the local band Thunderhead, who later worked with him. When he finally emerged, he vowed never to touch heroin again. "When I asked God for help, I always got it," he said. "I couldn't do it alone." Johnny returned to the stage in 1973 with renewed purpose. His comeback album, Still Alive and Well, blended blues grit with hard rock power, and the title track, written by Rick Derringer, became a declaration of survival. His comeback show at Nassau Coliseum proved it. Johnny Winter was battered, but he was back. Through the mid-1970s, Johnny Winter moved between rock and blues, releasing albums like Saints and Sinners and John Dawson Winter III. But no matter how far he drifted, the blues kept calling him back. That pull became irresistible in 1977 when he teamed up with Muddy Waters. Johnny produced Hard Again, the Grammy-winning album that revived Muddy's career, and followed it with I'm Ready, King B, and a celebrated live record. The partnership earned enormous respect and cemented Johnny's role as a guardian of the blues. By the late 70s, he had fully transitioned from rock star to blues statesman. Albums like Nothing But the Blues and White, Hot and Blue marked a return to tradition. His concerts grew less flashy but more focused, with Johnny often sitting so fans could concentrate on the guitar work that defined him. A major highlight came in 1979 when he delivered a fiery set at the Rockpalast Festival in Germany, proving that despite ongoing struggles with alcohol, his playing remained unmatched. Johnny entered the 1980s at another crossroads. Raising Cane blended Chicago blues, New Orleans rhythms, and rock, earning mixed reviews but strong support from fans who loved his raw guitar tone. His live shows continued to shine, including a memorable performance at the Loreley Festival in Germany. Around this time, he even surprised fans with a lighthearted Tijuana Small cigar commercial. In 1981, frustrated with label indifference, Johnny launched his own imprint, Mad Albino, to release Whoopin', a collaboration with Sonny Terry and Willie Dixon. Terry later called it his favorite record, something that deeply moved Johnny. Relentless touring followed across the U.S. and Europe, with sold-out crowds reinforcing his status as a blues powerhouse. A major turning point came in 1984 when Johnny signed with Alligator Records. The move marked a full return to pure, uncompromising blues. His Alligator debut, Guitar Slinger, earned a Grammy nomination, as did its follow-up, Serious Business. He closed the trilogy with Third Degree in 1986, working with players like Dr. John and Tommy Shannon. These albums restored his artistic focus and reminded the world that Johnny Winter was still one of the greatest. His mid-'80s tours were equally powerful, carrying him across the U.S. and Europe with blistering slide work and emotionally charged performances. In 1988, he experimented with modern production on the winter of '88, which brought him new listeners while showcasing his evolving sound. A standout appearance at the Pistoia Blues Festival proved that even as trends shifted, Johnny's fire on stage never dimmed. The momentum carried into the early 1990s. In 1991, he released Let Me In, a return to raw, heartfelt blues that earned another Grammy nomination. His live shows were electrifying, including a standout performance at Madison Square Garden, where his explosive take on Highway 61 Revisited, backed by Booker T and the MGs, stunned even veteran musicians. His resurgence continued with Hey, Where's Your Brother? In 1992, featuring Edgar Winter's saxophone and organ. The album produced fan favorites like Johnny Guitar and You Keep Leaving. On tour, Johnny traveled the world delivering shows that blended decades of blues tradition with his unmistakable passion. One iconic moment came during a storm-soaked concert in Toronto in 1993, where he played silhouetted against flashes of lightning, an unforgettable image of a man whose resilience was as fierce as his guitar. By the mid-1990s, Johnny Winter entered a quieter but meaningful chapter of his career. Guitar magazines finally began recognizing his influence, publishing retrospectives on his groundbreaking style. Though he wasn't releasing new studio albums, his live shows remained powerful. Backed by Tom Compton and Jeff Gans, he continued touring worldwide, delivering performances that blended classic blues with his Grammy-nominated work. But 1996 brought new challenges. Johnny and his brother Edgar became involved in a legal dispute with DC Comics over characters resembling them in the Jonah Hex series. At the same time, fans noticed Johnny's declining health, though his slide guitar stayed sharp as ever. Even frailer by 1997, he pushed forward, launching CPW Records with Teddy Slatus. Their first release, Johnny Winter Live in NYC '97, captured the raw fire he still carried. That year, he reunited with Rick Derringer for shows that briefly recaptured their explosive 1970s chemistry. By 1998, he was touring extensively across the US and Europe. His pace slowed and his appearance grew more fragile, but his guitar work remained a highlight. At Finland's Pori Jazz Festival, his moving rendition of "The Sun is Shining" proved that his genius hadn't dimmed. Despite health concerns and the pressure of constant touring, Johnny kept going, driven by a lifelong devotion to the blues. As the decade closed, he was still touring with determination, now joined by drummer Vito Liuzzi. Fans packed his European shows, aware they were witnessing a legend fighting through pain to keep performing. His concerts carried a bittersweet beauty, slower, yes, but filled with the raw emotion and mastery that defined his entire career. Between 2000 and 2007, Johnny Winter's career became a mix of courage and fragility. Each performance showed both the toll of age and the fire that refused to go out. In early 2000, he appeared frail and needed help getting on stage, but once he touched his guitar, the unmistakable Johnny Winter tone filled the room. His speed and voice had softened, yet his emotional depth drew cheers. His struggles grew more obvious in shows throughout 2001 and 2002. But fans remained devoted. Even when his playing faltered, his slide work could silence a room. Performances at venues like the B.B. King Blues Club showed moments of brilliance that reminded audiences why he was a legend. By 2003, Johnny was at rock bottom, his life strained by addiction, health problems, and years of mismanagement. That changed when guitarist Paul Nelson stepped in. Johnny had been numbing himself with daily prescriptions and alcohol. "It made me feel like a vegetable," he later said. With Nelson and James Montgomery's help, he found a doctor who helped him quit everything. Shockingly, the anxiety he'd battled for decades disappeared completely. Once sober, Johnny saw the truth about his longtime manager, Teddy Slatus. Slatus had been skimming money and mishandling every part of Johnny's career. With Nelson's guidance, Johnny finally cut ties. "If I stayed with him, I'd never have come out of it," he admitted. The change was immediate. With Nelson in charge, Johnny's life and career stabilized almost overnight. Even after breaking his hip and learning that Slatus had died, Johnny felt only relief. The turnaround in Johnny Winter's life didn't stop with sobriety. It sparked a full creative revival. With Paul Nelson at his side, Johnny slowly brought his high-energy rock staples back into his live shows. Songs like Boney Maroney, Don't Take Advantage of Me, and Good Morning Little Schoolgirl returned to the stage, thrilling fans who had waited years to see glimpses of the old fire. In 2005, he reunited with his brother Edgar for an emotional hometown concert in Beaumont, Texas. The Still Alive and Well benefit marked their first public performance together in decades, raising funds for hurricane recovery after Rita. Edgar introduced Johnny as his musical hero, and the crowd erupted as the brothers tore through classics like Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. Both Winters were inducted into the Southeast Texas Walk of Fame that night, a symbolic homecoming for two local legends. By 2007, Johnny was back on the road for the Roadwork 2 Still Alive and Well tour with Edgar and Rick Derringer. One of the standout shows took place in Bonn, Germany, where Johnny's fierce slide guitar on Highway 61 Revisited earned a thunderous ovation. Despite his frail appearance, his dedication to the blues never wavered. Between 2010 and 2014, Johnny experienced an astonishing late-career resurgence. With Nelson managing and playing alongside him, Johnny focused purely on the music. His 2011 album The Roots paid tribute to the blues greats who shaped him. Featuring guests like Warren Haynes and Derek Trucks, it earned widespread praise and introduced Johnny to a new generation. Though performing seated and visibly weakened, he delivered deeply emotional shows, mixing blues standards with fan favorites like Highway 61 and Mojo Boogie. Fans understood they were witnessing a legend giving everything he had left. In 2014, Johnny began recording what would become his final studio album, Step Back. With guest appearances from Eric Clapton, Joe Perry, Billy Gibbons, and others, it celebrated the blues in its purest form. Released weeks after his death, the album won the Grammy for Best Blues Album, a perfect final chapter to a remarkable career. Johnny Winter died on July 16, 2014, in a Zurich hotel room while on tour, leaving fans and fellow musicians stunned. Tributes poured in, honoring a man whose guitar work shaped the sound of modern blues rock. His life was a blend of brilliance, hardship, mismanagement, addiction, recovery, and ultimately, redemption. Questions about his former manager's role in his darkest years still linger, though Johnny always denied the rumor that he was supplied heroin. Much about that era remains unclear, but what is undeniable is Johnny's long battle to take control of his life and art. Yet despite his towering influence, Johnny Winter still has not been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a fact many fans view as a shocking injustice. As one admirer put it, he wasn't just good, he was frighteningly good. Johnny's legacy lives in his unmatched slide guitar, his unmistakable tone, and his relentless devotion to the blues. Even near the end of his life, when asked what it felt like to simply be Johnny Winter again, he chuckled and said, "These days, it's not so bad." For him, the blues was never a career. It was a calling he followed to his final breath.